been this way for about 6 years now,
That's brilliant,
and
lads.
150 paid up members so far, and hopefully
That's
more this
class.
season.
Well
Yeah,
done, boys. That's great stuff. That's great stuff.
thanks. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure to help in any way I can.
Thanks a lot. So we'll start off in a bit. Is there anything you wouldn't like us to discuss, or
Nah,
everything's up for
anything,
debate?
whatever you want. No problems.
Okay.
No problems at all.
So first of all, we'll start off with how your love affair with United began. Uh,
I'm sorry, what was the question?
being a United fan, are you a United fan?
Yes, very much so.
Yes. So how did it begin?
Long, long time ago, when I was a young boy, my two older brothers are Liverpool fans, actually. And there was a guy that lived across the street from me who was a big Manchester United fan. So I was only about 4 or 5 years of age, and he bought me a Manchester United shirt and shorts, which to me was everything, because I grew up and we didn't have anything. Owning a football shirt was incredible to me. And there was a certain glamour about Manchester United that no other club had for me. And so when I was a young kid watching United on TV back home, they captivated me. And, I was growing up in a very violent situation in Belfast. And so United were a wonderful distraction for me from that. And despite the fact that, they weren't winning trophies back then, when you look at everything through the lens of a child, everything was magnificent to me. And the first time I cried with joy watching a football game was the 85 Cup final, whenever Norman Whiteside scored. And those were unique feelings for me as a child, because we didn't have a lot of opulence, we didn't have money, we didn't have things that brought a lot of joy into our lives. So what it was like to experience that type of joy was something only football could bring to me in United. So that's where it began.
And your career, obviously, we followed you for a lot of years, and
Thank you,
a lot
lads.
of United fans have followed you as well. So how did that begin?
Well, about 13, 14 years ago, I was doing a United podcast when podcasts was just getting started. Red Devil Radio, it was a mess, to be honest. But it was just an outlet like everybody else, is a way to talk about our favourite football team and not really anticipating that it would go anywhere. So about 2010, we started doing it properly, and we started emailing clubs like United. Truthfully, we were lying. We were telling them we were this big, massive radio show in America, and we had millions of listeners, and I doubt we had 5. And but we knew United really wanted to break into the US market, and they wanted people to help them do that. So the first year or two, they didn't respond to any emails, just ignored me. But we just kept going, and finally they started to do bits and pieces with us, small bits and pieces. And we developed a really good relationship at the time with a guy called Phil Townsend, who was United's communications director, who now works at UEFA. Phil's a very close friend of mine. And I think, I will commend United in the sense that they've never tried to censor me. I mean, of course, they've emailed me at times and been upset with some of the things that I've said and done, but they've invited me numerous times to their tours. I've sat and had drinks with Ed Woodward, who actually is quite a nice person and to meet. The communications director that's involved there now, Charlie Brooks, is just a wonderful human being. I really, really like Charlie. And so United have always been good to me over the years. We've worked really, really hard. It's hard to get good content. And there's a lot of other podcasts out there. There's a lot of other people doing stuff, and it's really, really hard. But we never did this for, people get into these for the wrong reasons. People get into this for money, or they get into it for fame and all these things that never happens. And it changes your relationship with football, and it changes your relationship with United. And then you become bitter when it doesn't bring you these riches. If you do it for the right reasons, you do it for the love of it, it'll grow anyway. It'll grow slowly, but it'll grow. Most people aren't willing to be patient. So for me, it was just an outlet for something that I love. It was a very positive outlet for me with my mental health, because I was suffering really bad depression at the time after the loss of my wife. And so it provided lots of benefits for me in my life that weren't material, but I needed them anyway. And it allowed me to do things and experience things that I never would have been able to do. And most notably stuff with United that I still get to enjoy today. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
Philip, you spoke about the US market. Obviously, yourself as someone with a history of following United, with your links to the United Kingdom, being someone in the US, was it an advantage for you because you'd come over from the UK and you were more well versed with footy and United, as opposed to, we see a lot of US journalists and people, you know, maybe with not that much knowledge. So was it an advantage when you started off, and now do your links with United and your history of knowing things about United, does it stand you in better stead, you feel?
Good question, because when I first reached out to United, they didn't realize I was Irish, right? And when they did realize I was Irish, they started to pull back a bit because they thought, well, I think they were kind of hoping that I was a bit of a naive American journalist and that they could sell a certain thing to me about United that wasn't quite accurate. You know, that some of the uglier sides of the club weren't well known out here. And Americans have a very different perspective on sport anyway. They are much more open to sport being used as a vehicle for business, whereas we are much more cynical about that. And so I think when they realized that I was from over there and I had grown up with the football club, they realized it was going to be harder to push that message on me. And so, but once they accepted what I was and I played by the rules, most of the time, most of the things you get told you can never talk about on social media. You know, you need to tell me things all the time that I can never talk about. This is why most people who claim to be in the know aren't, because most people who are in the know can't talk about what they know. Otherwise, they don't know it anymore. So, you know, so yeah, so it helped me in the sense that I suppose it led some credibility to my voice whenever I was broadcasting out here. But it hurt me in the sense that United were hoping to work with maybe a more naive American who they could push a message on and have them repeat it without questioning it. That didn't work. But they were, to be fair, they've been great with me.
Your honesty always stands out, Philip. You're very straightforward. You know, it's you don't pull any punches. How does that go down sometimes? Because we, like you said, we see United trying to give this sanitized, very everything's great. There's no protests. You know, everybody's on the same boat. But you're like, hold on a minute, guys. This is not how it is. You're not negative. You're just saying it as it is. So does that? How do they react to that?
Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, they've sent me emails at times where they're like, you're upset at this is wrong, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't do this. And I just tell them, like, I'm a 43-year-old guy. I've been supporting Manchester United for 37 years, thereabouts. I'm not one of these guys that's 19, 20 that is going to repeat the party line. So don't try to change who I am. All right. I'm just an old cynical United fan. All right. So you just have to accept that this is how I am. And it's not personal against anyone in particular, but I've been supporting this football club long before you were employed here. All right. So as much as you want to push a certain message on me, and that's fine. I'm older than some of the people that are asking me to do this, and I've been telling them, like, look, you will come, you will go. There'll be someone to replace you one day, right? And you'll go on and do something else with your life. I don't know if you're a United fan or not. You're a United employee, right? So I'm not PR. I don't do PR. I'm not a public relations. And so you can't ask me to do what MUTV does. You can ask me to do it. And anyway, and even if I did do that, if you sanitize the message and you say things that just aren't true, you have no credibility. People can see through it immediately. So whereas United would rather say to me, okay, look, we know what you are, we know what you're going to say, we know what you do. You know, a lot of people who work for the football club listen to my podcast and they direct message me on Twitter. I would never say who they are, but but a lot of people who work there in the director's positions listen to me and they'll message me and they'll tell me if they think I'm right or if I'm wrong. But they're always quite fair. They never come back to me and say, you can't say this or you can't say that. Like they gave me Michael Carrick 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And they're always saying to me, we'll give you this player, we'll give you that player, we'll give you this individual. and there's never a condition. I mean, sometimes they'll say to me when they give me a player, you can't ask this or you can't ask that, which is fine, right? But I mean, if I was working for a big mainstream outlet, I wouldn't allow that, you know. But they don't work with a lot of independent podcasts. You know, there's not many people outside of the mainstream broadcasters get content direct from Manchester United. So I'm very privileged in that sense. So I accept that there's one or two conditions, because they're reluctant to give certain, like they would never let me interview Ed Woodward, right? Because they know that I would pull him apart, right?
Yeah.
And so and they protect him from certain places. Like they would never give him the red issue and stuff for this very same reason. That's fine. You know, because even though I like Ed as a person, I could never, I'm not the type of person who would bring you on just to kiss your arse. I don't do that. So, so you know, it is what it is. I mean, I don't change. I give them credit where it's due, but when I do give them credit, it means a lot more because it's authentic, and they've done a lot of things right since the start of the year, a lot. And so I think that's great. I think they're genuinely making an effort to interface better with the community, with their fans. They've done a great job recently, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. And I think even from inside the club, what Solskjaer's done with the players and how they interface with social media, you look at Marcus Rashford, all the Jesse Lingard stuff's gone. I think they've done a very, very good job.
Okay, so before we move on to some transfer stories that you have covered in the past, I'd like to tell you about the evolution of the show. As you said that you started off with 5 viewers or 6 viewers. As you might know, that cricket is mainstream in this country, in Pakistan, so there's not much football. So recently, during the lockdown, we started this show just to educate our fans about MUFC, because most of our fans, they don't know about MUFC before 2003, 4, 5 maximum, because there was no footy on the television before that. So our goal was mainly, for example, we invited over Lou Macari, we had David Moore, we had Clayton Blackmore, Brian Terkane the other day. Right. So about 15, 16 ex-players, just to educate fans about the MUFC. And obviously, having you on is also a big honor for us, because I'm sure the fans will learn a lot. So as far as I remember, and I've been on Twitter for about 12 years or 11 years, I clearly remember that you broke the Robin Van Persie story. If I'm not wrong.
David Moyes. Well, there's a couple of things. When you work in football this long, it's impossible not to talk to people and know things that happen. For example, when Romelu Lukaku was signed for United, I got the first interview with him before MUTV. I was with him when he did his medical in Santa Monica. And I got the interview, and I interviewed him before he was a young kid at Anderlecht at 17. But I was able to break that day was done. All the pictures that were uploaded were pictures of him with my kid. He signed these on his Instagram. He said I met the first Manchester United fan. I signed the shirt, which was my son. And but you know, most of that's just from hard work, and that was when working with Mina Raiola. You know, there's a common misconception about Mina Raiola that Mina Raiola doesn't even run the agency. It's a woman that runs that agency, and she's the one that calls all the shots. She is a Brazilian lawyer, a lady called Rafael Pimenta, an extremely impressive lady, speaks 6 different languages. Very, very nice woman, but very ruthless. Players love her, and she was the one that gave me the interview. She gave me interviews with Pogba, but you know, we obviously I work with people in football that tell me things that go on. Sometimes I can't say anything. Sometimes I can. I was allowed to break the David Moyes being sacked, but before it was broken, because I knew it was going to happen, as I was told by people at the football club. It was really regrettable, actually, because David Moyes is quite a nice guy, and I was told before he was, which was really disappointing. They shouldn't have done that. So, you know, I'm not a transfer guy, right? It's not my thing. I don't speculate. I don't put stuff on my Twitter that it's not true, that is untrue, that is not well sourced. It's not my thing, right? Unless I'm certain of something, I don't play with it, because I'm not really interested in it. I find most of it to be nonsense anyway. Look, you can work with a lot of agents and they'll deliberately lie to you. So, you know, Duncan Castles, for example, is very, very close to Just a Foot Day. George Mendes is his agency. And, you know, it's not that Duncan doesn't know what's happening, but a lot of times they lie to him deliberately, so he'll put something out. I don't do that. So I maybe put one or two out a year, but I know that they're exceptionally well sourced. And like, for example, I know for a fact that United spoke to Pochettino in December, and we're thinking about sacking Solskjaer at the end of this year and giving him the job. That is 100% true. I know they had Jack Grealish at United in February, I think it was. So now nothing's been agreed, but these are things they should be doing. So, but most of it I don't talk about because I can't, because I would be breaking trust of people, and I don't want to do that.
Well, you've addressed the next question that I had when you brought up the Mauricio Pochettino link in January. I think you broke the news in January. So I know you can't go about that in much detail, but since you knew about David Moyes, were your sources as reliable about the Pochettino move, or how did that story break?
Well, I can't tell where it came from. There were different people that told me about Moyes, because Moyes was a long time ago. The Pochettino thing. So I can't obviously disclose where it came from, but it was 100% accurate. I remember I disclosed a few other details. One of them got me almost in trouble because I probably shouldn't have said it, but it definitely happened. So, look, you know, after Burnley, United were not seriously considering sacking Solskjaer, and they'd lost 4 and 7. He was obviously demanding Bruno Fernandes, but everything that happened in the first part of last season was entirely predictable because United did not sign a midfielder, and that's really what the root cause of the problem was. So they were really one-dimensionally tactical. Tactically, the Glazers took the Bruno Fernandes signing budget out of this summer's budget, so not last. And I don't know what, and as is, of course, you've seen Solskjaer gone from saying they're going to capitalize on coronavirus to saying we don't know what we're going to do because everything is contingent upon where he finishes. And, you know, you're talking about owners that are spending to finish top 4, not to win a league. So their objectives are totally different than Solskjaer's. So the Pochettino thing, that we're seriously looking at it because he was, you know, his fee with Tottenham at the end of the season, in the summer was up. You know, would not have to pay compensation to Tottenham, but it was the right thing to do. I mean, so nobody could predict what was going to happen. Solskjaer was in a mess. United were in a mess, and they're going to protect their advertising revenue, everything else. Advertisers were getting attacked on social media badly at the time. And you know, we're getting a lot of blowback from that. And they had to show that they were doing something about it. I mean, whatever people say about social media, advertisers do not pay. They're paying for fan equity. They're paying Manchester United to be co-associated with their brand and the hope the fans buy their product. That's what they're doing. If that association is negative, then it doesn't take much for sponsors to ask, what am I paying for? United, well, that has a huge detrimental effect on United as a business. And that is a serious concern for them. So just like when the Rooney thing happened, which was primarily sponsor driven too, because he was the most asked player by sponsors, United were held to ransom by him because they had no other alternative. They had no other superstar in that team. So they conceded to his demands purely because of the pressure put on them by sponsors.
Okay, so as I spoke about the Robin Van Persie story, how did you come upon that story in particular? Because that was a big deal.
I don't remember I was the one that broke it. To be honest, I think there was a couple of people had it, but I had really good contacts in Holland from some representatives. Back at the time, Frank Rijkaard was heavily linked with going to the LA Galaxy. And I was able to do some stuff with Dutch people then. My family's Dutch as well. My father-in-law's from Amsterdam. So we had some really good contacts over there that were telling us things that was going on. I mean, obviously, it wasn't no secret that United were after Van Persie for quite a while. And I think, you know, if United had won the league the year before, where City won the league, instead Ferguson would have went down. He wouldn't have stayed on. So that was basically the last acquiescence of Ferguson to let them win, to get that league title. And I think the reason why I didn't win it was primarily down to goals. But you know, it's just the same as any other. You get reliable information from people that you trust. One thing about the Dutch is that they don't give you information that's speculation. And we were doing tons of work with Ajax and PSV at the time. There was a guy who's passed away now called Pedro Salazar Hewitt, who worked for PSV. Lovely guy. And so we were getting that information direct from very, very close sources in Holland that knew Van Persie very well. And I don't think I was the one that broke it. I don't know, maybe I did. But there was loads of people talking about it at the time. But it was no secret that he wanted to go to United.
Philip, if I, you know, for a lot of the younger guys, it's very strange now because you have people being linked and you're finding out through social media and things. In my time, when I was watching United, when I was a younger fella with a little bit of hair on my head, I remember back then you'd only find out if it wasn't even the club website. You'd only find out at the start of the season. Like we found out about Seba Veron because it was one of the first big things that Sky covered. But before that, most of us didn't have a clue how and where Jesper Blomqvist came from, or didn't even have any idea that we'd signed Quinton Fortune until or unless, you know, we saw them warming up on the touchline. So much has changed now in the game. And yet more and more clubs don't want people to leak news. They just don't want you to find out, even if it's the most obvious thing in the world, whether it's United being linked with Sancho or whether it's, you know, City being linked with the centre back. How do the clubs try and keep it on the down low? Because it doesn't involve just a person. It's not just an agent and there's tons of people involved. Other than the outsiders within a club, how do they manage to try and keep it as secret as possible? Because anyone could leak it to you. Someone could go in and say, no, they wouldn't be able to do that. Would they get caught though?
I mean, look, you're not leaking trade secrets here. You're not leaking state secrets. You're leaking a football transfer, right? And very few of them are a surprise anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things you'll notice is Manchester United are quite good at signing players they don't have competition for. They're not so good at signing players they have competition for. So these transfers are not a surprise. They involve so many intermediaries. They involve so many people. And the thing is the last part of the deal is the negotiation between the two clubs. So everything else is done before that. Negotiations between the players, contacts, intermediaries, all this. And they always use intermediaries because they don't want to get caught tapping up. So that involves other people. So they use other people to discuss the transfer, discuss the terms of it with players, everything else. So it's utterly impossible to keep a lid on it. You don't. There are one or two situations where United will pull off something in surprise, like the Chicharito deal with Chivas, where they've done a really good job with the Mexicans keeping that quiet. But it's very, very rare. Any significant transfer, I mean, it's a saga. And United are the worst in the world at this, right? Because they drag everything out. They very rarely do anything efficiently. And so the fact that if Sancho gets leaked, it's really no consequence to United because they are no one else is in for him. You know, no one else has the money. I can tell you two things didn't happen. I can tell you that they did not tell Sky Sports that they would only pay 50 million. That is totally untrue. And they did not agree personal terms with them. That is also totally untrue. I don't know if he'll come. I'm 50-50 on it. I think they do need him, even though Mason Greenwood's playing really well. Because Martial doesn't stay fit every week. And it's not realistic to expect Mason Greenwood at 18 to do this every week. So I still think they need that quality, and Sancho fits them perfectly. But as far as keeping information quiet, it's utterly impossible. And most clubs leak it deliberately anyway. There's usually, I mean, you saw something utterly ridiculous last summer where they went after the media for linking them with Bruno Fernandes, saying they were upset that they were linked with him, and then they go sell him 6 months later, when quite clearly United were interested in him, right? And quite clearly they contacted Sporting Lisbon about them. And the player that should have been signed 6 months and even possibly 3 weeks before he was signed in January. You know, it's ridiculous. And it's the same with these football kits that get leaked every year. You know, they get leaked to see if people like them, and if people don't like them, they change them, which is exactly what happened to United shirt this season.
Is that true?
100%. But red and yellow shirt was down.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm gonna give my opinion, but that red and yellow shirt was Manchester United shirt. They saw the blowback on it and they changed it. They won't say that, but
Thank God, though.
Thank God
there
is
were,
right.
yeah, there were rumors about it. Also, so you spoke about a little bit about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as well. So how impressed have you been with him, and do you think he's going to make it long term?
Well, it's a really good question. So when you think about how he got the job, it wasn't that he got the job because he convinced United of some terrific strategy. It wasn't, he didn't sell them on anything. He didn't sit down with them and say, look, I should get this job on my body of work or because of my vision or because of anything else. He was in the right place at the right time. He got a caretaker manager's job. So United sort of stumbled into a solution. So it's not some great vision from the board that's got United in this situation. And they can talk about culture and the Manchester United way all they want. If it's not done from the top down, from above Solskjaer, then it can't be done. So the biggest reason why United don't resemble anything that they've done in the past hasn't got anything to do with football. It has to do with business. So the football side can't write anything until the business side do it. So they stumbled upon a solution with Solskjaer. And, you're talking business people really don't understand football. So everything will be determined by results. They have no ability to have vision to see okay, results are poor, but we're going in the right direction. None of that. They don't have that ability. So they're going to be completely reactionary. So I could completely understand why they gave him the job, because what they had under Mourinho was a complete contrast of what they had under Solskjaer in the beginning, where you never playing attacking football. There was young players being put in the team. They were doing everything that they weren't doing under Mourinho, and you had to get caught up in that emotion. And to be fair, they had to give him the job, because if they didn't, and they give it to somebody else and he comes in, he would have been slaughtered constantly compared to Solskjaer, and United would have been called all sorts of names in the media. How could you give up? You had this perfect solution in your hands and you still didn't give him the job. So then, of course, reality set in. They didn't support him properly in the summer. So United became really tactically one-dimensional. Once Pogba got injured and teams worked out that United could only play in the counter-attack, they sat deep against them. Daniel James didn't give them anything in front of a defender, and they were easily beaten because they couldn't dominate possession in games they couldn't create without having space in behind. And, they were very one-dimensional. Once they got Pogba and Fernandes back, then they were able to dominate possession in games and things changed. But every single one of United's problems, look, Mourinho finished second, 6 points ahead of Liverpool, okay, in 2018. That very summer, United went outside Dalot, Fred, and Lee Grant. Liverpool, miles ahead of United now. There's not a single resource that was made available to Jurgen Klopp that wasn't made available to Manchester United managers. There's no reason why United should not be in that situation, other than mismanagement above Solskjaer's head. That's why United are in the mess that they're in. And it's not, we keep asking to give Solskjaer time, which I'm having no problems with, but the people above him shouldn't be given any more time. They shouldn't be given any more managers. They shouldn't be given any more money to waste, any more decisions to make. And this summer, Solskjaer's not the one on trial, it's them. So what concerns me, Solskjaer, is after Burnley, the new manager bounce was over everything. This is really where you can find out a lot about a human being and whether there's tangibles into United's recovery. Is it actual real, or is it just form, or what is it? He changed the working environment United. He brought in a mercurial player in Fernandes that completely revitalized the football club, breathed life into it. They badly needed new blood in that dressing room for that reason, that were also loyal to Solskjaer, not just previous Mourinho players. So Bruno Fernandes is Solskjaer's player. He comes in, he wants to back his manager, wants to support his manager, and brings a quality to the football club they didn't have. They start winning games again. Confidence grows. Mason Greenwood comes in, who's also Solskjaer's talent. Solskjaer's introduction, Solskjaer's player. And Paul Pogba's back. So there's very different things at United that weren't there before that are the result of this 16-game unbeaten run. This is more than just form. There is very real tangibles, the very real foundation that United are building on. But what concerns me is if Solskjaer, who does this the rest of the season, the Glazers look at everything through the lens of profit and loss. They will look at United and say, is this a team that can finish top 4? Yes. Then we don't need to go out and buy Jadon Sancho. We don't need to go out and do all this. And I worry that he will be punished by his own success. He has to be strong on transfers. He should have been strong last summer. If he doesn't get the players that he needs this summer, then truthfully, it's unforgivable.
Your last point is very interesting because if you look at the season as a whole, then the first 6 months, you had Martial injured, Rashford only playing and Rashford playing out of his skin, basically. And behind them, we had Andres Pereira and Jesse Lingard, who aren't the top 6 cam material. So there's every chance that if Solskjaer outdoes his squad and comes third and wins even one trophy, then they can say you played 6 months with Andreas and Jesse and 6 months with Pogba and Bruno, and still you achieved all this, so you don't need any more transfers. So speaking of Solskjaer being at the right time in the right place, were there any other managers contacted when Solskjaer was made? We heard of Blanc, we heard of other managers as well.
No, I mean, if there was other managers contacted, they'd have got the job ahead of Solskjaer. I mean, let's be honest about it. On merit, Solskjaer is bottom of the table. You know, I mean, why would Solskjaer get that job? If they were legitimately talking to other people at the time, then they would have got the job. I think that what United's thinking was at the time was bring Solskjaer into the end of the season and you certainly won't bring him in for a long-term goal. That was not the vision. I think they wanted to sit and look at other managers. But the thing is, when you go from Van Gaal to Mourinho, it's an illustration you just don't know what you're doing. First of all, they're completely different managers, but they're very similar in their personality. And if you look at every club that hires Mourinho, they're all the same. They're top clubs that haven't had success in a few years. They sacrifice their principles, and they, up until recently, well, before he went to Spurs, Inter Milan, all these clubs were all the same. Real Madrid, but trying to catch Barcelona, they sacrificed their principles for a while to bring Mourinho in, and he brings you trophies if you give him what he wants. He's still a world-class manager in that sense. But when he leaves, he always leaves a mess behind him. So you have to bring a different manager in that puts the armor on the shoulder for players that like Solskjaer did with Mourinho. But Van Gaal's the same way. And I spoke to Frans Hoek and everything. He worked with Van Gaal at United, and they're very, very disciplinarian managers. It was no surprise to me that when Solskjaer came in, you saw a Manchester United that played much more open attacking football because he's a guy that is not going to be like Mourinho. He is much more of an armor and a shoulder type manager where players were going to be happy. So yes, of course, Solskjaer wasn't. He was a temporary solution, which is why he was called caretaker manager. And United wanted the time to look at other candidates. Obviously, Pochettino was a consideration, but in the end, they were in a situation where they had to give him the job because he was just doing so well. So at that time, no, there was no one else under serious consideration. I can tell you that the players didn't want Solskjaer to get the job. They actually wanted Michael Carrick to get it, but they obviously changed their minds once they saw him.
So, Phil, since you mentioned that you have some Dutch links and you have brought stories from that board, there's a story that has been building it within the United fan base, and it's more of a joke within amongst the fan base right now, and that's Wesley Sneijder. What happened with that transfer? How did it transpire? What made it look likely every other season, and then it never happened? How did it fizzle out?
Well, primarily because of Wesley Sneijder's personal demands, and the Glazers weren't willing to pay it. Ferguson wanted him. Ferguson leaked the story at the time to Bob Cass, who's now dead, unfortunately. He worked at the Mail. Ferguson and Bob Cass were really, really close friends at the time. And he told Bob Cass off the record what was happening. Bob Cass printed it. There's actually a clip somewhere, you can find it, of Ferguson in the US walking into a game and stopping and bollocking Bobcast, for a better word, over him leaking what Ferguson told him. Ultimately, it was down to United not wanting to pay the personal terms that Wesley Sneijder was asking for. Magnificent player. Should have been signed as part of the Ronaldo deal. If they really wanted him, they could have got him from Real Madrid as part of the Ronaldo deal, but the Glazers wanted the money because at the time, that was whenever the financial crisis happened, and 2008. United wanted to cash up front. They had a year to do that deal. They knew Ronaldo was leaving. So it wasn't an excuse to turn around and say there was no value in the market. They knew that as soon as the deal was announced, it was going to inflate the market. And so they went out and signed Antonio Valencia, Michael Owen on a free instead of properly investing in the squad. And, so to me, I think it was just purely down to finance. The United just didn't want to pay his personal terms.
Recently, we've heard a lot about how certain players Manchester United sign because the manager wants them, and then there are certain signings which are termed as Ed Woodward signings, such as Angel Di Maria and Radamel Falcao. How much truth is there in these notions?
Well, Angel Di Maria, to be fair, was name-checked by Van Gaal the week before United signed him. So I don't think you can blame Ed Woodward on that. Radamel Falcao was an opportunistic signing. United were wrong by his agent, said, do you want him? You can get him on loan. This is what it's going to cost. They wanted another striker. Van Gaal came in late that summer because he was at the World Cup. Weren't fussed on Danny Welbeck. And they got rid of Danny Welbeck to Arsenal, which was still, for me, the right move. They gambled on Falcao, but Falcao was never fit. But they took him anyway, and they tried. It just didn't work. Super, really, really nice fella. I'm really just, of all the transfers in the years that didn't work, that's one I'm most disappointed in. Because if you saw the Falcao at Atletico Madrid, he was just sensational. And it was so exciting to see him at United. But, in the final analysis, Gallo's been better than Falcao ever was. So really disappointing that it didn't work out. But that was an opportunistic agent offering. But this was happening way too often at United, where you could see they were signing players that he's a bit good, he'll do. Right? It wasn't down to any thought-out strategy where they were going after players that were the result of, analysis, scouting analysis. And unfortunately, they keep going down the list of third, fourth, fifth signings. And you still see this with Jude Bellingham, with Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland was a player that Solskjaer gave his debut. How do you need to miss out on Erling Haaland? And to me, it's not plausible to say, well, we pulled out of that deal once we learned about his release clause. This is the first thing you find out, remember? Before you buy anything, you find out the cost of it, right? So I don't believe that at the last minute United found out that they wanted to insert a release clause, given that they know the agent inside out anyway. And if that was true, then that is unbelievable ineptitude. But Jude Bellingham, I interviewed Harry Redknapp 2 weeks ago on my show, who gave Bellingham his debut and said to me that he'll be a £100 million player in 2 years. If you're not going to sign the top players in the market at Manchester United, then you have to sign the top young players. You can't keep missing out on them. So I think once again, here's another player that a manager at Manchester United has asked for, who to me would be a better option than Jack Grealish, because Jack Grealish won't get in Manchester United's midfield right now. He's going to cost a lot of money. Whereas Jude Bellingham, 17, you don't have to play him every week. You can have him grow into that team and be a squad player, as United so badly need. But again, they've missed out on him. And, if Jude Bellingham was German and he was in the German second division, Bayern Munich wouldn't miss out on him ahead of an English club, right? So, or Borussia Dortmund for that matter. So it's another failure from United's recruitment team.
Philip, talking about United's recruitment, obviously when Sir Alex went, David Gill also went. And there was a worry amongst fans that, whether he did it or he didn't, David Gill got a lot of the credit for finding and getting Sir Alex the kind of people that he wanted. Then Ed Woodward comes in and nobody knows anything about Ed. Okay, we know he's the money guy. and we keep hearing amazing stories about how we're going to sign Fabregas, and, you know, Gareth Bale and Ronaldo are both sitting on the plane, and, you know, Ed went to Australia apparently on a boat to find Fabregas, and by the time he came back, and yet on the last day, in the last minute, we pay 8 million more than we planned to for Fellaini. That ended up being the only signing David Moyes got till we brought Mata in, by which time David Moyes was on his way out anyway. Was David Gill as important to transfers as is made out? And was Ed Woodward brought in, and was he totally clueless? Did they change the people who worked with the transfers and give everything over to Ed? Because it doesn't make sense how you go from being supposedly brilliant in transfers to being totally clueless within the space of a couple of months.
Well, first of all, it's an absolute myth that David Gill was some transfer guru master. David Gill was lucky in the sense that he was working for a genius that covered up his mishaps. I mean, you had to miss out on players all the time, every year. We just talked about one on Wesley Sneijder. So, you know, David Gill worked with one of the greatest managers in the world, right? But even Ferguson, by today's standards, would find it really difficult because the level has risen with City. You know, they're exceptional. Liverpool are magnificent. You have to get the manager the players that they ask for. So David Gill missed out on players all the time, but he got away with it because of who he was working for. David Gill leaving didn't change anything, in my opinion, in terms of David Gill and Ed Woodward just don't like each other at all. I'm not going to get into it, but they just don't like each other. You can speculate. If you can put the pieces together, you can figure out why. But so it was no surprise that David Gill left when Ferguson left. David Gill's a smart guy, and he knew that this was going to be very difficult. And the quality in that squad in Ferguson's final year was not great. I don't know why they allowed him to sign Will Zaha 6 months before he left. It made no sense to me because they knew he was going. So, but nonetheless, he did. And the failures in the market that summer were down to a couple of things. And this is why I'm concerned about what will happen this summer. They greatly exaggerated the quality that was in that squad. They didn't feel it needed major work because they just won the league by such a large distance the season before. So, of course, the owners are looking at that who know nothing about football, and businessmen who know nothing about football looking at that going, well, we won the league, but I can't. So why do we need to spend all this money, right? And that's the metric they'll use everything by. So, because they don't have the football vision to see where it needs strength and what doesn't. So, also, I think Moyes didn't want to come in and completely rip up Alex Ferguson's team. You know, Ferguson hangs over the place, and Moyes was his choice, but was a bit weak and underestimated the size of the job. And also made a stupid and calculated error to think that 6 years meant 6 years. It doesn't. So you don't get 6 years to build a team at Manchester United. And losing out on players like Thiago, Toni Kroos, players like that is just ridiculous. These are players that would have changed United dramatically. This is what I'm saying. Every single issue at United is down to mismanagement. Where they're at, mismanagement. And so this is why I have serious concerns, because it's still the same people making the same decisions. And United just can't get out of their own way. Alderweireld, for example, United were offered Alderweireld the day before the transfer window for 25 million, and Woodward said no, despite the fact he'd been telling him, he was trying to get him for a month, and he wasn't. I have serious concerns. I think Woodward likes Solskjaer in the sense that he's not a massive personality that will bully him. Woodward probably doesn't fear saying no to Solskjaer, but the David Gill thing is nonsense, and he gets way too much credit just simply because he happened to be there at a time when one of the greatest managers in the world was there. You or I could have done that job at that time.
You mentioned David Moyes being Sir Alex's choice, Phil. We keep hearing about, obviously people write anything with United in it because it sells, everybody laps it up. there was a book about it by a Spanish journalist in which he wrote that, you know, Mourinho was crying because he thought the job was his. Was anyone else under consideration at all, or was Moyes always who Sir Alex wanted?
Moyes was who he wanted. Like, he talked to Guardiola in New York.
Yeah.
They were some talks with Mourinho, but Ferguson never wanted Mourinho there. Right? I mean, not a chance. So Ferguson and Mourinho did not. I mean, they started to get along a little bit towards the. I mean, this is Mourinho trying to get the job, of course, but they didn't particularly like each other. And of course, United got Mourinho at the wrong time. That was the right time to get him. Yeah. Definitely wanted the job. Would have been the right move, but it also would have put Edward under enormous pressure because he would never have got away with what he got away with. So, you know what I mean. So for me, I think. It was Moyes was, you know, the Glazers looked at Moyes and said, look, here's a guy that is a carbon copy of Alex Ferguson. He's Scottish, he's parsimonious, he won't spend a lot of money, he'd bring us success on the cheap. So of course we're going to go for him. What was David Moyes' greatest attribute at the time? Being able to build a decent team at Everton on a shoestring budget. That was it. So that's why he was attractive to United. They wanted to repeat this process. This is where the Glazers are not in this to spend hundreds of millions every year, right? So even they'll grow tired of this at some point. But it's going to be really interesting because if you look at the last time there was a financial crash, United didn't spend. And I have a serious fear that this will be an identical summer to the previous years in that it'll be a very big disappointment.
Okay, so Phil, you've spoken about the transfer strategy and the change of culture in the board, that until that doesn't happen, there's not going to be much success. But we've heard in the media, and obviously there might be briefings from the club, obviously we don't know, that Matt Judge, again, a person totally unrelated to football, a CEO of the corporate side of things at United, we hear that he's dealing with the transfers. He dealt in the Bruno Fernandes transfer as well, and he's dealing with the Sancho deal as well, and that Woodward doesn't take part in the transfers anymore. Is that true?
Well, it's a really good question. First of all, Patrice Evra was saying something that was really interesting when he was saying he was going to leave United, and Edward repeatedly told her that he was his director of football, which is weird to me. But when you look at where United published their financials a couple of months ago, March, I think it was, Woodward certainly didn't sound like a man that had nothing to do with transfers. Now, he likes to tell you that he doesn't. I think he's being cordial with the truth. I think he probably doesn't have anything to do with a lot of the administrative side of it, but certainly he does in the decision-making side of it. I mean, no one's signing anyone at Man United if Ed Woodward says no. Simple as that. So I think it's very easy to say you have nothing to do with transfers when they're not working out. I'm serious. Look, it's a bit like your boss saying that they have nothing to do with the profit. You know, because you're the one going to work every day and you're the one making the sales and everything else. But try doing something without his authorization, right? See how it goes. Try selling something below the price he set, see how it goes, right? So, you know, of course he's still, I mean, he's being paid like someone that has responsibility. And if United were top of the league, those statements wouldn't be made.
Phil, I want to talk about Solskjaer's management over here. We've all seen in recent times how United doesn't really do well with central attacking midfielders like Kagawa didn't really excel, and then Wayne Rooney didn't really excel in that role. However, Solskjaer has built this team now around Bruno Fernandes, and Pogba coming back in was supposed to create a rift between the two players, but they're getting along really well. So how do you think Solskjaer's management has helped with this transition, because we didn't do well with central attacking players?
Yeah, United have totally struggled with that. But if you look at Ferguson, after you look at the Roy Keane era, they did well with Scholes in that role. But after Roy Keane retired, United never really got quality defensive midfielders, so they always struggled with an attacking midfielder, right? And so I mean, I think it was from 2007 to 2012, United didn't sign a midfielder. So it's very difficult to integrate an attacking playmaker when you don't have someone in behind him who's a complete defensive midfielder. So they played Carrick in that deep defensive playmaker role that Barcelona did with Xavi and everything else. But not in the attacking sense, like Varane failed as well. So what Solskjaer has done, and we have to see, look, it's still early. You know, I mean, really you judge him over the season. But so far he's done an amazing job. And United have changed a little bit in the sense that Rashford and Greenwood aren't traditional wingers that stay out wide. They come in the channels and they interchange, which is very conducive to attacking midfielders, drop the balls in over the top. United wingers of old were old-fashioned wingers that played out wide. So with an old-fashioned number 9 like a Ruud van Nistelrooy. So it wasn't really set up for that. And you can get exposed in a midfield really easy. So with that type of playmaker. So Solskjaer's done a very, very good job. It remains to be seen whether he starts every week with Pogba and Fernandes. I think that would worry me against teams that are very, very good going forward because there's big gaps in the midfield. United will need more defensive cover at some point. But so far he's done an amazing job. And I think it's primarily down to the front three, the way they play. The fact that Matic has been so good so far defensively for United, but there's still some problems defensively. I mean, they need another left back, they need a ball playing centre back. They can't play the defence. They routinely get caught playing the defence, and I think Maguire needs an extremely quick ball playing centre back beside him.
Okay, so Phil, you spoke about Mino Raiola at the start of the show, and Pogba and Mino have been a hot topic among the United fan base for a couple of years now. So how much truth is there that some fans apportion the blame to Pogba, some say it's Mino? So how do you think, where do you think the truth lies actually? Who is at fault, and is Pogba likely to stay?
Well, I'll go back to what I was just saying. Imagine you go to work tomorrow, right? And you have a set of rules and you go into your shop and you start screaming at your customers. How long will it take before your boss fires you? Pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
All right, so who works for who? Mino Raiola works for Pogba, right? So if Mino Raiola is doing things and not being sacked, it's because Pogba's allowing it. So our agent only does what a player lets him do. You work within the rules of how you're employed. So what Mino Raiola is saying is coming with the blessing of Paul Pogba. So for me, you're responsible for your employees and you're responsible for your employees' conduct. I certainly don't do anything in my job without my boss's blessing unless I expect to be sacked. So, Paul Pogba owed United an apology for what happened before the derby whenever Guardiola said he was offered him. That should never have happened. That should have been addressed immediately. Remember, Rooney got slaughtered for this too when he was being linked to City. Yeah. So the agent works for the player, and the player's responsible for what the agent does, not the other way around. This doesn't happen with anyone else. So Paul Pogba takes responsibility for what Mino Raiola says.
But if you look at his clients, mostly Mino Raiola's clients, for example, if you speak of De Ligt, for example, when he was moving from Ajax to Juventus, he created a huge drama. He used different jerseys. Mm-hmm. He said, I like red. He said, I like blue. He said a lot of things. And you also have Haaland as well doing the same thing. Remember the Instagram story where he had about 12 to 13 team jerseys, and then he picked out all of them, including United's. So why do all of his clients do the same things then?
Because it is nauseating, egotistical marketing. It comes from the LeBron era of the decision of I am going to be so arrogant to think that the entire world is waiting to find out where I'm going to go. And so it's all about marketing. It's about followers on Instagram. It's all about this nonsense that young people are totally captivated and fascinated by. So they capitalize on it. United do it too. Everyone does it. Whenever they were announcing the Paul Pogba transfer, it was all Pog back. It was all this dragged out nonsense, because
The Sanchez piano thing. Yeah,
like,
when you look back at it now.
Well, just think about how many clicks, likes, follows, and United are getting every minute of a transfer window. And Richard Arnold's on record talking about this, saying, you know, how lucrative it is for United. So they all benefit from it, right? And so it's just noisy and egotistical market, and that's all it is. And so, you know, I mean, it doesn't really hurt the players. I mean, these players don't really care. They're making a lot of money. But you only do that if you agree to it. I mean, players aren't being told what to do by their agent and agreeing to it. I mean, an agent's not stupid. I mean, if a player is strong-willed and says no, the agent does what he's told.
Philip, we see, and I say this with as much anguish as I possibly can show, but we see Liverpool and City have, you know, proper organizations and proper setups in place with the way they go about things. Even for all the stick that he gets, more often than not, Abramovich backs his managers and gets them players. I mean, right now in the off season, you'd have to say in this, you know, broken season, Chelsea have made brilliant signings. They've got Ziyech coming. They've tied up Werner, who Liverpool wanted. Like you said, you're worried about United going forward. What's it going to take for that to change? Because if they've been doing it this long, they're not going to suddenly wake up one morning and say, okay, we saw Philip and the boys have a chat about it. You know, we've had an epiphany. We're going to change our mind. They're going to do what they're doing because, like you said, they only want top four as long as it brings in Champions League money. They're not in it for spending money. What will it take for this to change?
Well, the only thing that will take for it to change is when the revenue dries up. Look, their interpretation of success is very different than yours. They determine success by a profit and loss sheet, not a win-loss sheet. So when you're looking at City and Liverpool don't have what United have. They don't have a big commercial machine that generates revenue. Their route to financial success is through football. Simple as that. They have no other choice, right? So they cannot rely on this big machine generating revenue. Same with Chelsea. But Chelsea's owner's not in it for money. You know, he's in it to, well, I'm not going to say. But Chelsea's owner is not in it to make money, right? No. And so Glazers are in this to make money, to take as much money as they can out of Manchester United. You know, so you know, when you hear things like, imagine the Sky Sports story was true. United won't pay 90 million, they'll only pay 50 million, right? If we could just ask the Glazers to give 40 million back of the billion they took out so the football club could actually function, that'd be really nice, right? So the Glazers are not in this to appease you, me, or anybody else. They're in this to make money. They don't care about you, me, or anybody else. They've done one interview in 15 years, and that was the day they bought the football club. That means they think you're beneath their contempt. They will not talk to you. They will not communicate with you. Mentioning their name on MUTV is like shouting Beetlejuice, right? Absolute panic, fear, dread, shit, don't talk about the Glazers, don't you? Imagine owning a football club and you can't talk about the people that own the football club. What nonsense is that? The absolute fear and dread that comes over the producers, the presenters' face whenever you mention their name. Why?
Yeah, they cut your call.
Yeah, why can't I call the football club's own channel and talk about the people that own the football club? Why?
Philip also spoke to Boyan as well. He also spoke to Boyan as well. Yeah, he got a lot of stick from MUTV about speaking about the Glazers as well. So Hassan, you can go next.
Yeah, no, it's just like you said, Philip. You can't talk about them. You can make no mention of our lack of success. Ed Woodward is going on and on about how much we spend. But Ed Woodward won't sit down and talk about how we spent poorly. Like you mentioned, getting. I mean, I still remember Falcao coming on, and then he got the reception that he got. You know, you were sitting there going, wow. But clearly, we wouldn't have paid for Falcao at his best when he went to Monaco, which is ideally when we should have tried to get him because, like you mentioned, he was brilliant. He was on the same level as Ronaldo and Messi at that time. We got him when he was in a pretty bad way because probably somewhere they thought, you know, this is a marketing decision. It was not a footballing decision at all.
I want you to imagine if you were in a situation where you were making $1 million a day, right? And you were getting I don't know, pocket money of $100 a week. And you're going out and spend it in candy, and somebody's coming back bollocking you because you spent $100 on candy. Right? And they're saying, wait a minute, you wasted that money on sweets. How dare you? Well, you know what? You took the other 990,000 off me, you know, and you're going to be like me about the 100 that I spent. You know, forgive my fourth grade math, right? But you get the point that I'm making, right? So this idea that there should be guilt attached to the money that United have spent, that is their money in the first place, right? Is absurd. Listen, you've taken $1 billion out of this football club. You're the only people that wanted to own it. No one else wanted you here. You haven't brought anything that was already that brought anything here. We've been charged $1 billion to have the privilege of being owned by you people, right? Who have done nothing but prostitute the club's history all across the world for revenue. Right? There's nothing they wouldn't sell, nothing. And so I don't understand. Even Man City fans get this confused. Criticism of owners and criticism of football clubs are two very different things, right? So I am not criticizing your football club. I'm criticizing the people that own it. And Manchester United were let down by the regulating bodies in England, just like Wigan were this week. And just like so many other people are let down. You've got the situation going on at Newcastle. And so this is just disgraceful. Disgraceful. And the football club is being used as a personal ATM by people who have no connection to it, don't care about it, don't care about any part of it. And so if United waste 50 million on Falcao, it's their 50 million to waste. All right. So when you look at the debt, when you look at the increase in finance charges and all these dividends, it's absolute nonsense. And United are the only football club in the world that could absorb this, but it won't last forever.
No, and it's amazing. Like you mentioned, it's not just at any football club. It's in the biggest football club in the world. Philip, we always make it a point, you know, for us as football fans, as Manchester United fans, to speak to you, speak to everybody who's come on the show. It's such a privilege. It's an honor. We can't put it in words. So we always make it a point that hopefully down the road when things get better, we want to invite you to come out to Pakistan whenever you can.
We'd love that.
We'd love to host you. And of course, we have much better food than India. So that's why when you come down here.
Listen, lads, I would absolutely love that. It would be my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show. And hopefully we can all connect physically at some point in the future. And I'm here to help anytime. Great stuff with everything, lads. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot, Phil. I only have one question left. If you can entertain it.
Ahead.
Obviously, you have your connections and you have your links as well. And we try to keep this show moving on by having more United legends or famous journalists such as yourself on. So, is there anyone you can recommend us to?
Let me think about that. Let me see what I can do. We're going to help you out with, lads. Let me think about who would be good candidates. There's certainly people we talk to at the football club. I will certainly ask them for you and get their answer, and see if I can forward you on their contact details. I'll ask them to give, if it's okay for me to pass it on to you. No problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Loads of ex-players and stuff that I talk to on a regular basis. So be happy to help you. So
thank you so much, Phil.
Keep in touch with me, lads. Direct message me anytime. Cheers, boys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
lads. Get some sleep, boys. See ya. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Take care. You too.